Kirkby-in-Ashfield, or East Kirkby as it was once known, lies in the heart of the former Nottinghamshire coalfield, 10 miles northwest of the city of Nottingham. Its staple industries in the 19th and 20th century were textiles and coal mining. Kirkby's first railway dates from 1819, the Mansfield and Pinkston Railway, a 7-mile long horse-drawn tramway which connected Mansfield with the national canal network at Pinkston Wharf on the Cromford Canal. The hinterland around Kirkby-in-Ashfield saw significant industrialisation during the 1890 to 1916 period, with the development of 2 new large collieries at Kirkby Summit in 1890 by the Butler Company and Bentinck Colliery in 1895 by the Newark Mill Company. The Manchester, Sheffield and Lincoln Railway, soon to be the Great Central Railway, arrived on the scene in 1892, and in 1897 to 1900 the Great Northern Railway opened its Lean Valley extension from Kirkby South Junction to Shirebrook. The original 3-road Kirkby Loco Shed was built by the Midland Railway Company in 1903 to provide motive power for the coal runs in the rapidly expanding North Nottinghamshire coalfield. It was the last complete loco shed to be built by the Midland Railway Company. At the grouping in 1923, Kirkby became part of the London, Midland and Scottish Railway, known as the LMS. During the grouping period, which lasted from 1923 to 1947, 2 classes of loco dominated at Kirkby: 4F 060s and later Stanier 8F 280s. Over 45 8Fs were allocated to Kirkby at its peak. Albert White memories of the 8Fs on the Wellingborough Lodging Run in 1940 and 50s were recalled in the 2010 newspaper's publication Railways Remember, written and compiled by Martin Weiss. Sam Fisher was a loco driver at Kirkby from around 1940 to 1966, and he wrote his unpublished memoirs including railway memories during World War II. He recalled how Kirkby engineman Lowell Stacey was shot in the legs in a Luftwaffe attack, and how they once were going through Pinkston with a night coal train with bombs dropping all around them. When his family joined him to live at Kirkby, Sam's wife called it the last place that God had made. During the war, plans for oil firing at Kirkby Loco were put in place because of the possibility of coal shortages. However, this never came to fruition. At nationalisation of the railways in 1948, Kirkby Loco Shed went into the London Midland region of British Railways, first having a shed code of 16C, then 16B and finally 16E. Following the closure of Mansfield Loco Shed in April 1960, Kirkby took on the work, including the Chilwell Ordnance Depot workman's train. This would be the last scheduled passenger working from the nearby Kirkby-in-Ashfield East Station, which closed in September 1965. Regular passenger services had finished a year before on the 12th of October 1964, when the Nottingham Midland to Worksop services were withdrawn, a victim of the beaching cuts. Modernisation measures at Kirkby were first proposed in 1947, but took 10 more years to come to fruition, following the 1955 Modernisation Act. Coal and ash plants were installed in 1958, known locally at the time as Rocket Launching Sites 1 and 2, and an additional 2-road shed on the west side of the original 1903 Loco Shed building was built. However, facilities were still inadequate for an allocation of 60 plus locos, and gas lighting remained. Unknown at the time, the coal and ash plants would see less than a decade of use. Loco fitter Aileen Grice, now in his late 80s, has a phenomenal memory and I first interviewed him about his time on the railways on Ashfield Community Radio in 1996. One of the few people who stayed in his own trade when doing national service, his time was spent on the Longmoor Military Railway in Hampshire. In later life, Aylan worked for many years on loco restoration, service and repair at the preserved Great Central Railway at Loughborough. John Smith started at Kirkby Loco in 1962 as an engine cleaner and has retained many of his railway documents from the time. He has also written poems about his time on the railways and growing up in industrial East Kirkby in the 1950s. Folk singer Dave Goulder worked on the railway at Kirkby from the early 1950s through to the early 1960s, when he moved to North Scotland to run a youth hostel and take up dry stone walling. One of the few British songwriters to write songs about railways, many of them involve tales of railway folklore in and around Kirkby and the characters they involved. Song titles included The Day We Ran Away, the Footplate Song, 8 for 8 Blues, and this one here, The Man Who Put the Engine in the Chip Shop. Another one of Dave's songs was the Turntable Song, about an incident in 1959 when an 8F fell into the turntable pit at Kirkby Loco during loco turning operations. The lyrics go, he went to see the foreman, he was shaking at the knees, saying, "Sir, you've got an engine parked at 45 degrees. A video clip of this can be seen on YouTube. Just do a search for the Turntable Song. Details of Dave's other railway recordings, his CDs and other folk songs, along with his railway songbook, can be found on his website at www.davegoulder.co.uk. Kirkby finished officially as a motive power depot on the 31st of December 1966, with the last 8Fs leaving in the spring of 1967 to go to the North West England, the last bastion of British Rail steam. Rob Bradford, a local lad at the time, and David Dykes recorded the last moments of steam at Kirkby Loco early in 1967. The original 3-road shed was demolished in 1966, leaving the 1958 Loco Shed and adjacent sidings as a diesel stabling point with a D16 Nottingham Division allocation for the next 4 years. The first mainline diesels came to Kirkby in 1964, brush Type 4s, later to be Class 47s, and English Electric Type 1s, later Class 20s, the latter which worked in pairs and formed standard motive power to the remaining local pits into the 1990s. The adjacent Kirkby Summit Colliery closed in 1968, to be followed by the Loco Sheds and Sidings in the autumn of 1970. Plans in the early 1960s was for the summit to be a super pit, with 1.5 million tonnes of coal per year being dispatched to the newly constructed Trent Valley power stations from the adjacent railway sidings at Kirkby. In less than a decade, over 3,000 jobs were lost at Kirkby in coal mining and on the railways. To commemorate the 50th anniversary of the closure of Kirkby Loco Shed and Sidings, a small exhibition was displayed in late October 2020 at the Kirkby Heritage Centre. A book of poems, Poetry in Motion, about Kirkby Loco Sheds and Sidings, edited by Keith Murray and David Amos, was published at the same time. It included poems by former Kirkby railwaymen and by Keith himself, the son of a Kirkby engine man. The Mansfield and Pinkston Bicentenary Railway project kindly sponsored the printing of the books. Copies can be obtained from Kirkby Heritage Centre and by post. See details on the Steaming Back to Kirkby Facebook page. Unfortunately, a planned 2-year heritage project steaming back to Kirkby failed to materialise as the coronavirus broke early in 2020. Further information about Kirkby Loco Sheds and Sidings can be found on the Steaming Back to Kirkby Facebook page. A blog, Summit Circular, looks at aspects of East Kirkby's industrial past and can be found on the Mining Heritage website at miningheritage.co.uk. Photos and documents relating to the history of Kirkby Loco can be found at Kirkby-in-Ashfield Heritage Centre. A special Steaming Back to Kirkby event is planned to take place at the 2021 Elizabethan Model Railway Society event in October 2021.